Imagine driving through a tiny American town. There is nothing around you but flat land, open sky, and maybe a grain elevator in the distance. And then, out of nowhere, rising above the cornfields and the wheat fields and the empty prairie, you see it. A massive stone church with towers so tall they seem to touch the clouds. You blink. You slow down. You wonder if you are dreaming, because what you are looking at should not exist here. Not in a town of 300 people. Not in a place most Americans have never heard of. And yet, there it stands. Proud. Beautiful. Impossible. This is the story of 8 Catholic parishes hidden deep in rural America. These are not tourist destinations. These are not famous landmarks that show up on travel lists. Most people drive right past them without a second glance. But if you stop, if you take the back road, if you walk through those heavy doors, you will find something that takes your breath away. These churches were built by farmers, immigrants, and ordinary families who had almost nothing. And yet they built something extraordinary. Something that has lasted for over 100 years and will likely last for 100 more. Number 8. St. Remi Catholic Church. Russia, Ohio. The town of Russia, Ohio has a population of about 712 people. It is a quiet little place in the American Midwest, surrounded by flat farmland in every direction. But drive through it and you will immediately notice something strange. The church here is enormous. It towers over everything around it in a way that simply does not match the size of the town St. Remi. Catholic Church was established in 1854. It was founded to serve French and Swiss immigrants who had come to this part of Ohio to build new lives. They were hardworking people. They farmed the land, raised their families, and poured their hearts into their faith. And when it came time to build a church, they did not build something small. They built something that would last. The current building was completed in 1892. It is the third church this congregation has built on this spot, each one grander than the last. The style is mostly Romanesque revival, which means thick brick walls, heavy stone, and beautiful rounded arches. But look up at the tower, and you will see something a little different. The tower has Gothic elements. It's pointed and reaching upward like a prayer toward heaven. But here is what makes this area truly special. St. Remi is not alone. It sits in a region known as the land of the cross-tipped churches. This is a stretch of the Ohio countryside where the landscape is so flat that you can see the cross on top of one church steeple, while the previous one is just disappearing in your rearview mirror. In 1979, the National Park Service added more than 30 structures in this region to the National Register of Historic Places all at once. 30 structures. In a single thematic group, because this area is that remarkable. Number 7. St. Meinrad Arkabi. St. Meinrad, Indiana. The town of St. Meinrad, Indiana, has a population of just 664 people. And sitting right in the middle of this tiny community is one of the most significant religious institutions in the entire United States. St. Meinrad Arkabi is one of only 2 arkabies in the entire country. There are only 11 in the entire world. Let that sink in for a moment. A town of 664 people is home to one of 11 places of its kind on the entire planet. The church at the heart of the Arkabi is called the Arkabi Church of Our Lady of Inzidal. It was built primarily from local sandstone, and the result is a building that feels like it grew directly out of the earth. The twin towers on the front of the building are massive and commanding. They are the kind of towers that make you feel small in a way that is actually beautiful rather than frightening. Inside the Arkabi live nearly 80 monks. They follow the rule of St. Benedict, which is an ancient set of guidelines for monastic life that has been practiced for over 1,500 years. These monks pray together multiple times a day, work, study, and welcome visitors with genuine warmth. The tradition of hospitality here has continued for over 170 years without stopping. The Arkabi also runs a prestigious school of theology that trains men for the priesthood. But it is not just for future priests. Regular people, lay Catholics, can come here to study as well. And every year, thousands of visitors come not to study, but simply to rest. There is a guest house on the grounds where you can stay overnight. You can join the monks for prayer. You can walk the quiet grounds and feel the weight of the world lift off your shoulders, at least for a little while. Number 6, STs, Peter and Paul, Catholic Church. Strasburg, North Dakota. Strasburg, North Dakota has a population of just 379 people. It sits on the open prairie, where the wind is constant and the sky goes on forever. And in the middle of this small town stands a brick church, so large and so beautiful that it is hard to believe it was built here. By the people who lived here more than 100 years ago. SDS, Peter and Paul Catholic. Church was completed in 1910. It was built by German-Russian immigrants. People who had originally come from Germany settled in Russia, and then made the long journey to the American frontier. They carried their faith across 2 continents and an ocean, and when they finally stopped moving, they built this church as a declaration. This is where we belong. This is our home. The steeple is so tall that it can be seen from miles away across the flat North Dakota prairie. Inside, the church is filled with hand-carved altars and paintings that were shipped all the way from Germany. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The detail is astonishing, and it was all done by people who were breaking land, surviving harsh winters, and building a community from almost nothing. The church has a very famous connection to American pop culture. Lawrence Welk, the legendary bandleader who entertained millions of Americans on television for decades, was born in a sod house just outside Strasburg. His family were devout members of this parish. His parents are buried in the cemetery behind the church. In 1986, the building was added to the National Register of Historic Places, and today it draws visitors and pilgrims from across the country. Number 5, St. Anthony of Padua Catholic Church. Hoven, South Dakota. Hoven, South Dakota has a population of about 360 people, and this is where you will find a church that people call the Cathedral of the Prairie. The story of this church begins with one man. Father Anthony Helmbrecht was a priest from Bavaria in southern Germany. He had grown up surrounded by some of the most beautiful churches in Europe, and when he arrived on the flat, windswept plains of South Dakota, he had a vision. He wanted to build something here that would match the grandeur of the great cathedrals back home. People thought he was crazy. You have to understand what the plains looked like at that time. There were no cities nearby. There were no wealthy donors. There were German Catholic farming families spread out across miles and miles of open grassland, each of them working incredibly hard just to survive. But Father Helmbrecht believed in them. He went door to door across the prairie, knocking on farmhouse doors, asking for whatever people could give. A few dollars here, a few dollars there. Slowly, painfully slowly, the money came together. The church was completed in 1921. It cost roughly $250,000 to build, which in today's money would be an absolutely staggering amount for a rural parish of this size. The building is a mix of Romanesque and Gothic styles. 2 massive towers rise 140 feet into the sky, visible from miles away. Inside, there is intricate stenciling on every surface. The ceilings are ribbed with gold leaf, and there are 31 enormous stained glass windows, every single one of them imported directly from Bavaria. But the most powerful part of this story is not the building itself. It is what happened decades later when the church needed a major restoration. The quote from professional contractors came back at over $500,000. For a small rural parish, that number might as well have been $1 billion. So the people of Hoven did something remarkable. They refused to give up. Local volunteers learned restoration techniques themselves. They trained, they practiced, they worked. In total, the community contributed over 20,000 hours of labor by hand to repaint and regild the entire sanctuary. 20,000 hours. Done freely, out of love, by ordinary people in a small South Dakota town. Number 4, St. Mary's Catholic Church. Beaverville, Illinois. The town of Beaverville, Illinois has a population of about 306 people. And here you will find a church with a very different story from the others we have visited so far. While most of the rural, Catholic churches in the Midwest were built by German or Irish immigrants. St. Mary's was built by French Canadians. In the mid-1800s, pioneers from Quebec made their way south and settled here on the Grand Prairie of Illinois. They named their little settlement St. Marie, but because there was already a town in Illinois with that name, they eventually changed it to Beaverville, after the Beaver Creek that ran nearby. The church they built is a stunning Romanesque revival structure. The exterior is made of massive limestone blocks that were hauled in by rail, which was itself a giant undertaking for a community this small at the turn of the century. Inside, you will find white oak woodwork that has darkened beautifully with age, marble altars brought in from far away, and intricate stained glass windows imported directly from France. The parish also had a school called Holy Family Academy, which was run by the servants of the Holy Heart of Mary, a religious order that came all the way from Paris, France, to teach the children of this small Illinois town. The school eventually closed in the 1960s due to declining attendance, but the church still stands, and the beauty that those French-Canadian farmers poured into it more than a century ago is still there, waiting for anyone who takes the time to find it. Number 3, Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary Catholic Church. High Hill, Texas. High Hill, Texas is a very small community. The exact population is hard to pin down, but it is somewhere between 1 and 200 people, maybe less. And yet this town is home to one of the most visually stunning church interiors you will ever see anywhere in America. The painted churches of Texas are a national treasure, and this one is among the finest of them all. From the outside, you see a beautiful red brick church in the Gothic Revival style. It is lovely. But then you walk inside and your jaw drops. The interior is covered from floor to ceiling in extraordinary paintings. But here is the thing that makes it so special. These are not simple murals. The artists who painted this church used a technique called trompe-l'oeil, which is French for trick of the eye. Surfaces that look like carved wood are actually flat walls, painted to create a three-dimensional illusion. What appears to be ornate marble columns is actually painted plaster. Vines and gold leaf and intricate patterns cover every inch of the vaulted ceiling. The whole effect is meant to recreate the feeling of a great European cathedral. Right here in a tiny Texas town, the parish is also known for its annual picnic held every Labor Day Sunday. This tradition has been going for more than 125 years. Thousands of people travel from across the region to gather here for German food and music. The church was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1983 and remains one of the most photographed historic sites in all of rural Texas. Number 2, St. Mary Catholic Church, Praha, Texas. Praha, Texas has a population of 25 people, 25, and it has a church that people travel hundreds of miles to see. Prahi was founded by Czech immigrants who named it after their capital city, Prague. The church was completed in 1895. From the outside, it is a simple stone structure in the Gothic Revival style. Modest, understated, but step inside and you enter another world entirely. The wooden ceiling above you is barrel-shaped and curved, and it is painted with a breathtaking mural of the Garden of Eden. Lush greenery, flowers, local. Texas plants and trees woven into an image of paradise. Right above your head as you sit in the pew, every inch of the walls is covered in hand-painted designs and elaborate stenciling done with extraordinary care and precision. Outside the church are 3 small chapels. These were built specifically to honor the young men from Praha who gave their lives in the Second World War. In a town of 25 people, those lost lives were not statistics. They were neighbors, brothers, sons. The chapels feel deeply personal in a way that larger memorials sometimes do not. Every year on August 15th, the town hosts the Praha Picnic to celebrate the Feast of the Assumption. Thousands of people descend on this tiny community for traditional Czech food, music, and dancing. For one day each year, a town of 25 people becomes a gathering place for thousands. That is the power of a community with deep roots and a strong faith. Number 1. St. Bonaventure Catholic Church, Reville, Nebraska. And here we are. Number 1. And I promised you at the beginning that this one would be unbelievable. So here it is. Rayville, Nebraska has a population of 18 people. 18. And it has a church with twin Romanesque towers that rise so high above the surrounding farmland that you can see them from miles away in every direction. But before we talk about the church, we have to talk about the story of this town, because it is one of the most remarkable stories I have ever come across. In 1886, the Northwestern Railroad was planning to build a station in Rayville. For a small rural community, this was enormous news. A railroad station meant access to markets, to supplies, to the wider world. It was exactly what a young town needed to grow and survive, and the people of Rayville voted against it. The local pastor, Reverend Bonaventure Fallhopper, and the people of the town were worried. They feared that the railroad would bring in outside workers and travelers, that this would disrupt the quiet, close-knit Catholic community they had worked so hard to build. So they said no. The railroad built the depot on a different farm, 3.5 miles away. That place became the town of Petersburg. Years later, Rayville began to understand what they had given up. When it came time to build a new school, they had to haul 340 loads of building materials over 4 miles of muddy, frozen, wintry roads. Every single load. By hand and by horse, through the cold Nebraska winter. They finally got their own railroad station in 1917. And the materials it delivered helped make possible the greatest thing Rayville ever built. St. Bonaventure Catholic Church was constructed between 1917 and 1919. It is a Romanesque revival masterpiece. The twin towers are massive and magnificent, visible across the flat Nebraska plain for miles and miles in every direction. For a town of 18 people, it is almost impossible to comprehend. And yet there it stands, as solid and sure as the faith that built it. These 8 churches are not accidents of history. They are choices. They are the result of real people, ordinary people, deciding that beauty matters. That faith is worth sacrificing for. That even in the middle of nowhere, in a small town with barely enough people to fill a single city block, something extraordinary is possible. If you ever find yourself driving through the American heartland, take the back road. Slow down. Look for the cross-tipped steeple rising above the cornfields. Because in the most unexpected corners of this country, someone built something magnificent and left it there for you to find. If this opened your eyes to a part of America you had never seen before, share it with someone you think would love it. And if you know of another hidden church or sacred place that deserves to be on this kind of list, leave it in the comments below. I would genuinely love to hear about it, and who knows, it might just end up in a future video.